Oh, this is so trolly. If you don't know why it's saying this and why it's got a Nintendo controller there, it's because way back in the day, this is pretty well known now in the gaming industry, but back in the day it wasn't really that well known, that Sony, before the PlayStation came out, was collaborating with Super Nintendo to create a new SNES CD system, because of course the Sega had the Sega CD. And so Nintendo wanted a, Nintendo CD of their own, and so they contacted Sony to help them do this. Well, for whatever reason, there's a bunch of speculation that Nintendo basically said suck a dick to Sony, or that Sony fucking didn't like Nintendo's terms, or vice versa, or whatever else. PlayStation was created because Nintendo balked on the deal and decided to go with the competitor, which was the Philips CDI instead, by having a bunch of Nintendo properties get licensed for the CDI. Now, those turned into travesties, which I'm sure you're all knowledgeable of, which would be the Zelda games and Hotel Mario, which were all complete travesties and failures at life. And on the contrary, Sony took what they had developed for the Super Nintendo and developed it into the PlayStation. Now, the funny thing about this is that had this not happened, the gaming world may have actually, just died. It may have literally just, faltered and fizzed out of existence. And the reason why I have this theory is because if the PlayStation didn't come out, and the SNES CD came out with the backing power of Sony, it likely would have decimated the market. It would have, fucking annihilated Sega, because I love Sega, but I know for a fact that think about how strong the PlayStation was, and think about if that was coupled with, Nintendo first-party games. That would have been like a nuclear fucking destruction of a steamroll against everything else. It would have just annihilated everything. So in this circumstance, because Sega would have been knocked out of the game so early, they likely may have just hung up their hat with the Saturn, and they definitely would have with the Dreamcast, as they already did. So because of this, with Sony being or Nintendo being so dominant, with PlayStation backing it with the SNES CD, and possibly even with the future Nintendo 64 having Sony backing, Xbox and Microsoft likely would have never jumped into the game because they would have faced overwhelming odds, as Sega would have backed out of the game, and there would have been no competitors, as there would have been no Sony PlayStation. So faced with no competitors, Nintendo would have been completely alone in the gaming market and would have likely stagnated because it would have no competitors, and we might have seen the end to video gaming as we know it because there would be no competition and therefore stagnation in the market. So the very fact that Nintendo balked on their deal and caused Sony to jump into the gaming market may have single-handedly saved gaming to even have it exist in the way it does today. So, again, that is notable that, that little changes like that could drastically affect the way that the world would have played out with video games.